Good morning, everyone. My name is Jack McDougall, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Welcome to our Regional Policy Leadership Series, presented this week by MGM National Harbor. We thank them for their support. The series also supported by Comcast, First National Bank, GS Proctor & Associates, Giant Food, Holland & Knight, McGuire Woods, and McGuire Woods Consulting. I want to thank you all for tuning in today and being part of the discussion with our regional police chiefs. Joining us are Chief Malik Aziz of the Prince George's County Police Department, Interim Chief Ashan Benedict of the Metropolitan Police Department, Washington, D.C., and Chief Kevin Davis of the Fairfax County Police Department. We appreciate you all taking the time to be with us. Through this discussion, we'll learn about some of the challenges and opportunities facing each department in terms of policies, recruitment, retention, adoption of new technologies, and overall public safety, and much more. We're pleased to have Kerry Watson, MGM's National Harbor's Regional Vice President of Government Affairs, facilitating today. Kerry has deep roots in the community. He was raised in Prince George's County, where he spent 20 years with the Prince George's County's Police Department. He also served as a senior advisor for public safety to the county executive, and in his role at MGM, he still advocates for the community he was brought up in and our region. So Kerry, thank you for that. Thank you for leading the discussion this morning. And now I will turn it over to you to get started. Thanks again, everyone.
Well, good morning, everyone. And Jack, thank you for those really kind words. This is an issue that has obviously been a large part of my life. As you mentioned, I was a Prince George's County police officer 20 years. I've lived in this region my entire life. I've never lived anywhere else. So this is something that has touched me personally in many ways, not to mention that I have a 24-year-old daughter and a 22-year-old son that live in this community as well. So, despite the idea of this being a business issue, and this is a business organization, this is something that impacts each and every one of us very personally as well. So I want to thank the chiefs, Chief Aziz from my beloved Prince George's County Police Department, Chief Davis, who I have known for literally 30 years, standing beside him in the police academy, and Interim Chief Benedict, who is joining us as we know that Chief Conti has announced his retirement. 30 years in the district. He's done some amazing work. It's unfortunate that he can't be with us today, but we are graced with your presence, Chief Benedict, and we are really looking forward to having this conversation with you as well. So with that, we might as well start the conversation, I believe, and we won't start easy. It appears that carjackings, violent crime, homicides, it feels like they are rising in the region. And this general sense of unease that we see in the press on a regular basis is really feeling pervasive. And we were wondering, is this real? Or is this just something that, just is getting more press recently? And if so, how are you facing this challenge? Chief Davis, why don't we start with you?
Thank you so much, Kerry. It's good to see you again. Good to be with Chief Aziz and Chief Benedict as well. Fairfax County certainly shares the challenges that our surrounding jurisdictions do. We don't necessarily have the volume of violence, but what we see in Fairfax is not inconsistent with what the rest of the Washington metropolitan area is seeing. So I talked a little bit earlier today about the bellwether crime for me is carjackings, typically committed in the National Capital Region by young people. They don't commit this crime by themselves. Typically, they're in a group, and they're bold, and they're violent. And for public safety to continue to be effective, or to be as effective as we should be, I believe that the consequences for crimes like carjacking, a bellwether crime, just like a citizen robbery is a bellwether crime, a car theft is a bellwether crime. The consequences don't have to be necessarily severe and forever, but they need to be swift and certain. And I think that's the gap we're seeing. Listen, I support police reforms. I negotiated the consent decree when I was a police commissioner in the city of Baltimore. So I believe our profession has to continue to get better. I believe our profession's better now than it's ever been. And we shouldn't give up on getting even better. But I don't think we have to abandon the past proven and reliable tenets of our profession when it comes to holding people, particularly violent people, accountable for their behaviors. There's no surer way to change someone's behaviors than to introduce him to our criminal justice system. And I also mentioned earlier, Carrie, that the drug courts that have been so successful here in this area and across our country are successful because someone's introduced to our criminal justice system. They finally get the help that they need, the help that their family and friends couldn't convince them to take advantage of. So our criminal justice system can certainly play the role of helping people overcome their challenges as well. So our last word on Fairfax, a third of our homicides in Fairfax are actually adult children killing their aging parents. And that speaks to mental health and behavioral health crisis. We're all in on the co-responder theory, responding to emotionally disturbed persons and those calls for service where someone's crying out for help. So I believe in that. We're doing it. We need to continue to do more of it. But the violence post-COVID that we're seeing in Fairfax really is domestic related more than anything else in Fairfax County. And it's adult children who are harming their aging parents. And there's so many people who need to be at the table to solve that equation. So I'll pause there and thank you for having me to be part of this group, Gary.
No, I really appreciate those comments, in particular the ones about drug courts and problem-solving courts. I happen to be the president of the problem-solving court of Prince George's County, so that's something that I take very seriously and I think is a critical piece to solving, you speak of criminal justice reform. Yes, I mean, our job should be to improve people's lives and their outcomes. And if you can get people out of their addictions, that's one really proven way to help them move to become a positive people in society. Chief Aziz, can you follow up on what Chief Davis was speaking about in terms of the violent crimes that are occurring in our region and how your police department is managing them?
Well, thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here and speak with you guys, today about important issues. Let me add on to what Chief Davis was talking about. We do have the volume here. It's a high volume. I think the thing that has plagued us the most has been the rise in carjackings. I would say it was a spike, but it hasn't yet stopped spiking. It has been on the rise. And I'll give some real, numbers here, because in 2021, when I arrived here in 2021, and I noticed the rise in carjackings, which was unlike where I came from. They hadn't experienced that yet. And I thought that was some kind of fad, a new thing to do. But it stayed. And we created the carjacking interdiction unit to address these things head on. But in 2021, we finished the year with Prince George's County Police Department with 391 carjackings. That was 391 real victims, people putting their gun to your face or body, taking your property from you and creating all kinds of trauma. The following year, we had 480 in 2022, 480 rising, carjackings rising. Higher than what we have seen before. And even this year, we are just below 170. We're at 169 carjackings. And you put that all together and you have a recipe for disaster, violence around you, and creating an unstable environment in communities who hear about the worst of these things on the media. When people are beating up a senior citizen and trying to take her car. When people are robbing and carjacking an Uber driver or a rideshare driver and killing them as a subsequent carjacking. These are things that have plagued Prince George's County. But I'll say one point of note here, really is important. For the first time in our record keeping, in 2021, we arrested more juveniles for carjacking, for violent offenses, than we did adults. The same in 2022. And we're on a pace this year to arrest more juveniles for the violent crime of carjacking than in our record-keeping history, which should raise an alarm, should signal an alarm across the region, because this region is very different from anything I've seen before. We cross lines here. We're in DC, Virginia, and Maryland in a matter of minutes. And these people recognize no boundaries. It is one big community to them in the DMV, which would serve us well to address those issues. But just expounding on what Chief Davis said, we're still experiencing those things, but carjacking being the most heinous and the most cumulative of violent crime.
Chief Benedict, Chief Aziz was saying that Prince George's County is seeing well over one carjacking a day on average. What are you seeing in the district, and how is MPD managing this situation?
It's the same trend as the chief mentioned. These carjackers, they don't know geographic boundaries, jurisdictional boundaries. But my problem in DC is going to be Prince Aziz's problem and Chief Davis's problem as well. Our armed violent offenders move across state lines. We had one that went to Tyson's Corner, committed a shooting and was incarcerated and is now facing severe consequences for that. So I thank you to the criminal justice system in the Commonwealth. We have our challenges here. When you're talking about juvenile space, you're talking about adult space. The bright line is weapons, and especially weapons that are used in what we call contact shootings. And I still believe that it's a relatively few number of people committing the worst offenses within our city. And if we take an aggressive stance towards those violent offenders and incarcerate them, and that acts as a deterrent, that will have a positive net influence on our violent crime numbers throughout the city. We have a bifurcated criminal justice system here in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Attorney's Office prosecutes basically all felonies, except in the juvenile space. The district court is the federal version. When you incarcerate someone for a violent crime, there's a rebuttable presumption that the defendant has to show that he or she should be allowed back in the community because they've demonstrated violence in that offense. On the Superior Court side, there's a rebuttable presumption that the government has to prove that this person should be incarcerated after committing a violent offense. It's just two different operating systems when it comes to holding people initially that have been accused of a violent offense. That's a problem for us here in Washington, D.C. And that Superior Court legislation is governed by the D.C. City Council. On the federal side, it's of course the federal laws. So we have to take a one style approach to this to really make a difference in holding violent offenders. And I'm talking about murderers. I'm talking about armed carjackers, people that have assault with intent to kill are still walking in our community. So when the major city chiefs get together, Chief Davis, Chief Aziz, other major city chiefs, it's not about, hey, how do we solve crime? We know how to solve crime. We know how to arrest people that have committed these kind of offenses. We have an amazing detective bureau. All three agencies do. But when we get them locked up, we have to keep them locked up. We have to take that danger out of our community. So we'll continue to press forward and do that. I do want to mention, between 2022 versus 2021, Washington, D.C. had a 7% decrease in violent crime and a 10% decrease in number of homicides. Over the last 10 years, we've had over a 40% decrease in violent crimes committed in Washington, D.C. So it's not a trend that we're seeing to continue where it's going up. There is an uptick now. And at this time last year, there was an uptick, but we made significant gains throughout the summer. We expect to do the same this summer.
So you're saying that there was an uptick over the last 2 years, and that just happens to be after the pandemic. I think most people feel that since the pandemic, there's been a change in behavior, that people maybe have less patience, they become more violent. Maybe part of this is that there's a camera on every single corner, there's a camera on everyone's door. So we are actually able to see these behaviors, even if they're not in our presence. But all of you all have spoken about juveniles specifically, which maybe suggests that there's even a larger problem out there that needs to be addressed. Chief Aziz, what are your thoughts on that? Is it a post-pandemic issue? Is it an issue with, parenting? Like, what is creating this sense that violence is becoming a solution for people in our society right now?
I think what we have seen is all of those things. I don't think there's one variable or one input that we can single out that is the cause for this. The pandemic sure played a role in what we saw with the isolation of young people, with the changing of cultural norms or boundaries, and that for that to play out and how serious it wasn't that long ago. For that to play out in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and in our schools, of course, it had a profound impact on how young people would respond while they are still, formulating the base of their lives. I think there's also has been the breakdown of the family has become the pandemic exposed a lot of those things because you saw people and you were enclosed. The proliferation of guns in the wrong hands played a very a vital role in the increase of violence. The lack of the social media aspect, the lack of conflict resolution and conflict management, and the flaring of tempers when guns are readily accessible to move in and out of our communities and lend a helping hand to an already growing problem. So what we have seen now is these ingredients come together for a recipe for disaster. And when you have the police, Chief Benedict, said it, because police chiefs know how to do these things. We've been doing them for decades, and we've put a lot of vested interest in making sure we do them. But there's a greater wheel, a greater cog, and we commonly say police reform. We shape things around police reform, but we should be shaping things around criminal justice reform. We should be shaping things around multidisciplinary team reform and how we agree and write MOUs together. And especially in this region, we have to talk to Fairfax, we have to talk to DC, but not just the police. When the breakdown and what's happening with the violence and what has happened with young people, if we don't create an atmosphere of connectiveness, of networking, not just with police, then these problems will continue to be compounded, just like you pointed out earlier.
What are your thoughts on that, Chief Benedict? What are you seeing in terms of, is it some greater societal issue that we are managing right now?
I think in the juvenile space, and again, it's not all juveniles, but when you see these young men and women out in the middle of the night, 3, 4 in the morning, ages 12 to 17, committing armed carjackings or violent crime, premeditated crimes of violence, that's concerning, right? Where are the parents in this space? Where are the guardians? And where is society trying to help these young men and women? And as we talk through the criminal justice ecosystem, we want to give our youth a second chance, right? A third chance, a fourth chance. But the bright line again is violent crime. And when we return these young men and women back into the same communities that they were in when they committed these offenses, that's not a solution. And then that's not a good solution for our city and our community. We've got to do better. We've got to give them opportunities away from maybe the home, there's drug use there. Maybe there's abuse in that home, and introduce them back into the situation is not the answer. So it's all of us. It's not just the government judicial system that should be the answer. We're the end result, really, in that chain of events. And if the schools and the parents and the community and other services are there to help keep these young men and women off the streets committing crimes, that's the greater issue.
Chief Davis, you kind of touched on this a bit earlier when you were talking about a third of the homicides that occur in Fairfax County are young family murdering their parents, which really is shocking to me. But is that a post-pandemic phenomenon for you there in Virginia and Fairfax? Do you sense there's some greater issue that we're trying to get through?
Carrie, absolutely. It's a post-pandemic phenomenon to have a third of our murders be adult children. And by adult children, I mean early 20s to early 40s who are still living at home and killing their parents. Our calls for service for emotionally disturbed persons have tripled since the pre-pandemic years, tripled. The amount of active violence incidents, AVIs, that we get at our schools now have more than quadrupled in the post-pandemic years. Fentanyl is present in all of our schools in a huge way post-pandemic, and the overdoses that are associated with fentanyl in all of our jurisdictions. It's something new in all of our careers. We didn't have to deal with this 30 years ago. And Chief Benedict mentioned a young man, and I'll say his name because he's about to be sentenced, Noah Settles. He was a public enemy #1 in Washington, D.C., and was introduced to the criminal justice system on numerous occasions without a consequence. And he's the one who came out to Tyson's last summer and just recklessly shot into a crowd of people on a Saturday afternoon. He's been held, detained ever since, and he's about to face a consequence for those actions. But a lot of conversations that we should be having as a criminal justice system should surround the necessity of holding violent people while their court case is pending. If not, you're going to reintroduce them, as Chief Benedict said, to the same environment that they just got caught engaging in criminal misconduct in. So there's a lot going on with mental health, behavioral health crisis. I think we're all on the cutting edge of doing things. But you mentioned earlier, Carrie, the importance of those specialty courts, whether it's mental health court or drug court. I think if you look back at DC and you look at New York City in particular in the early part of the 21st century, they were so successful because it was so prohibitive by law to illegally carry a gun. You wouldn't touch it. You left that thing at home. You left it at home. Now it's not nearly as prohibitive in 2023 as it was in 2003 to illegally carry a gun. And I have to emphasize the word illegally because one exit up is NRA headquarters. Being in illegal possession of a firearm, and Aziz mentioned this, if that gun's on your person and you're in conflict and you don't have the skills, you're going to resort to that firearm. So I do think it's not counterintuitive to talk about making policing better and holding violent people accountable. I think, post Floyd, people thought that was a counterintuitive conversation to talk about holding violent people accountable, because after all, we have to improve the criminal justice system. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think it was Chief Benedict who said, it's still a relatively small amount of people who are disproportionately responsible for an inordinate amount of violence. And those are the strategic focuses that we have to get back to as a criminal justice system. I will say the police, we do a pretty good job identifying wrongdoers and arresting them, but we're only one leg of the criminal justice stool.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on something that you just said, because you carefully danced around what is essentially politics. There's a lot of politics going on around a number of things, certainly not the least of which firearms. But it is so important to note, I think, that the role of policing in politics is you all don't make the laws. And quite often you are the ones who face the ire of the public because certain things are happening in communities. But, can you follow up on that, Chief Davis? I mean, you don't have control over what happens once someone walks out of your cell. It's very complicated for a police chief.
Well, I'll use one example, Carrie, the firearm conversation that we continue to have in this country. And, you and I served together in Prince George's County. I was the police chief in Anne Arundel and the police commissioner in Baltimore before coming here. I was only yelled at one time in Annapolis, and it was during some testimony I gave surrounding the illegal possession of firearms. Two things can be true at the same time. You can legally exercise your Second Amendment and legally and lawfully possess a firearm. That's a fact. Another conversation we have to have, without mixing it with the first conversation, is it's against the law to illegally possess a firearm. Both things are true at the same time. And it seems like we mix and match those conversations, and that's when it becomes political and it becomes red or blue or left or right. And it's frustrating to I'm sure you're still in this space doing this work.
Yep.
You know, when you talk about it, the illegal possession of a firearm, you're not attacking anyone's Second Amendment. You're having an entirely different conversation, but they get mixed up too often. And then it's hard to have, and then we get ourselves in trouble.
Chief Benedict, no one works in a more political environment than you. How do you manage that dance with the politics versus actually doing your job?
Very carefully.
Yeah.
Very carefully. You know, police chiefs, we're not elected officials. Sheriffs, there's some sheriffs that are elected out there, but I think police chiefs have a unique perspective. I mean, the law enforcement organization has unique perspective in that we get to really feel all three legs of the stool in the criminal justice system, right? We're out on the street, we're doing the job, we're making the cases, we're making the arrests. And then we're sitting down with the prosecutors the next day and talking about filing charges, and then schedule a grand jury for indictment. And then we go to court and we're testifying in court at a preliminary hearing or a suppression hearing at a trial, right? So prosecutors are not on the street with us. Judges are not on the street with us. The legislators are writing laws. They're not on the street, they're not in the court, and they're not in the prosecutor's office, right? So we get to see all of that. And when you hear police chiefs, you know, we try not to opine, but we do see the broad perspective of the criminal justice system at play each and every day. And I think we have the expertise to add value to the conversation that other legs of the stool potentially do not, unless they have the same type of experiences in their background. So when police chiefs say we need officers in schools to talk to the students that are at risk because these disputes, you know, tend to spill back in the communities. When the chiefs say we need more officers on the street, we need to tighten laws specific to certain types of crime, I think folks should take notice of that, because there's decades and decades of experience here, sometimes 30, 40 years, just trying to make everything better.
Chief Aziz, I'm going to change the subject unless you would like to hit on that topic briefly.
Well, I'll just, you know, add to it again, the proliferation of guns and short tempers, lacking conflict management or resolution skills has added to the violence from how to handle things with a gun from young people to adults. It's just not, the atmosphere has changed, the landscape has changed, and even here in Prince George's County, we've recovered thousands of guns in the last 3 years. We've made over 3,000, over 2,400 arrests, over 3,100, you know, gun seizures, and this is playing out because a gun is a misdemeanor, and until you do something with it, like carjacking, you know, a robbery or something like that, and we have to get a grip on this really nationwide conversation that is straddled with outcomes that are involving federal and state laws. We're not on one page, and it looks like it's a long road ahead to be on one page on what that actually means.
3,100. So you're talking 10 a day.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking yes, violence is here with guns. When I talk about, you heard the murders, what we had, you heard the carjackings that we've had, all carried out, the majority with a gun, carjackings, the majority of murders with a weapon, the majority of gun seizures we've had, recoveries we've had, the assaults, with the non-fatal shootings, the untold story of non-fatal shootings that people died as a result of a firearm, and those are skyrocketing. Where because we have a better response with EMS, fire EMS, we have a better response with our great doctors and nurses in the hospitals. We're getting placed faster. The roads are better. All of these things have added into the people's, you know, lives, not resulting in a homicide. But it doesn't stop the violent act of a shooting, a non-fatal shooting. And those are what we don't look at. We want to hear the homicide numbers, but we don't want to hear these other violent numbers that they're handling with weapons for very simple things that can be mediated rather quick. We're a long way from that.
Thank you for that. When I joined the police department 30 years ago, they handed me a notebook, a big map book, a radio that sat on my hip that I had to punch into the car. The technology that you all have at your disposal now, particularly when it comes to actually solving crimes, has to be pretty remarkable right now. What kind of tools are you using in Prince George's County to help fight crime and solve crime?
I think, we're evolving in police departments. We're always in a state of evolution and adaptation. And so as the world evolves, as technology evolves, then it finds its way to law enforcement, not as the creators of this, but as the innovators of it, on how can it be applied. So I think the biggest thing we have here in Prince George's County has been the automatic license plate readers, the LPRs. They've proven to be of great advantage, used properly. The camera systems the cameras have evolved in such a way where, they have, PTZ, you can focus in and out. They capture details better than we've ever seen before. And then the advent of how we're utilizing video doorbells, where people's homes are becoming more equipped with technology, that we're capturing things on video doorbells. We're capturing things on home cameras and business cameras, that they're utilizing this in a way that is helping the great detectives, investigators who do this job every single day. Those are just kind of like three things we're looking at. But on the other side of it is we're developing the smaller platforms like, how do we do online reporting systems to a person to engage, but we're trying to evolve that even more by having video type conferences. I think there's a role, as we look at what's happening with Chat GPT, I think there's going to be a role for those kinds of programs to be monitored, to be saddled or engaged in a network with some of our existing systems, to make an efficient process take place, rather, fast, or when detectives have a vast volume of information at their fingertips. And we are constructing here a real-time crime center. We're in the middle of building a real-time crime center. And when we're putting all the inputs, all of the information, because we're in an information-driven age, a technology-driven age, when it comes to one location, that those detectives need information really fast. Patrol officers need information really fast. So if we're reaching out like in a web or tentacles, and we're pulling information and say, this is information about this person, like you heard Chief Davis and Chief Benedict talk about, the guy who crossing lines on that side, that's information in real time that can be shared. And that's what we're engaging our smart systems to do, to talk to each other, not just to Prince George's County, but to talk to Maryland State, to talk to Fairfax, to talk to DC, to have a real close, efficient network of communication. So that's where our technology is taking us right now.
Chief Davis, I've obviously followed your career very, very closely, and I know there's been few that I've seen who has been more forward-thinking and innovative in the use of technology to help reduce crime in their communities. What are you using out in Fairfax that you find particularly exciting?
Well, thank you, Carrie. And that radio that you described that was issued to us is in our police museum here. Literally in the museum.
It had to be 4 pounds.
It was a brick, literally, with an antenna that was about a foot long. So add what Chief Aziz said, the Ring doorbell technology is a game changer. Communities can share that with the police. Absolute game changer. We talk about Ring doorbell technology at all of our press conferences because, when we were all coming up, we would say, call 1-866-411-TIPS. Nobody does that anymore. They don't even text a tip anymore, but they can share their video. So I'll add to what Chief Aziz said, genetic genealogy research. We have solved a number of cold cases in Fairfax County. And I want to ask you all to volunteer this, but I'll tell you, when I turned 50 a few years ago, for a birthday gift, I got Ancestry.com. So whether it's Ancestry.com or 23andMe, when you send your saliva in the mail, you are now part of a national database of DNA. And the way genetic genealogy research works is I may not have committed a murder, but I might have a first cousin who did commit the murder. I'm in the system. My first cousin is not, but there's enough DNA recovered from the scene to say, you know what, Kevin Davis didn't do it, but he's definitely related to someone who did. And that's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Another thing is touch DNA. Touch DNA on firearms and on crime scenes and on victims of crimes. Touch DNA is huge. What we're really proud of, we just stood up an absolute state of the art. I'm gonna bring Chief Aziz to it after I take him to lunch at Tyson's. We just opened a state of the art aviation center, and we've consolidated all of our unmanned aerial systems, or drones, and drones is not a bad word. We've got 25 drones now, and we consolidated them at our aviation center. I think 5 to 10 years from now, maximum, you're going to see drones literally attached to police cars. And on certain calls for service, what will be sent forward faster, quicker, will be a drone to a particular scene, probably an outdoor scene. It could be a crash. It could be a shots fired call. It could be a missing person call. It could be a disorderly call. It could be someone in a mental health crisis. And that drone is going to get there before the cop gets there and literally start feeding information back to this young police officer responding to the scene. So we're really excited about that as well. And Chief Aziz mentioned license plate readers. We've got flock cameras deployed, about 52 of them throughout Fairfax County. We became aware of this technology from a couple communities that could afford to pay for their own flock cameras in their homeowner associations. So we purchased about 52, and they're deployed where data tells us crime occurs the most often. And they not only read license plate readers, that's like your grandfather's Oldsmobile. They read the shape of a car, whether it's 2 doors or 4 doors, whether it's a sedan or an SUV or a pickup truck. They pick up color and they pick up defects. So if all you have is a red sedan fleeing from the scene and the witness's victim couldn't get a tag number, that technology right now can search for red sedans. And it's really, really amazing. And it's exciting. I'd like to be a young police officer nowadays because they've got more tools at their disposal than we certainly did.
Actually, you can send me information about that new technology as well. I'm fascinated by that one.
Sure.
So Chief Benedict, we were fortunate enough at MGM to have County Executive Angela Alsobrooks in our building, and I was able to ask her a number of questions. And one of the things that she mentioned were challenges with her budget in Prince George's County. Revenues were down, therefore they had to make some cuts in their budgets. And in terms of how it applies to this conversation, I know that police departments in particular, second to education certainly, but eat up a big portion of a jurisdiction's budget. How is the city's budget looking, and how has it impacted the operations of the Metropolitan Police Department?
So over the last 20 years, the city's budget has been robust, and we have good stewards of our budget. And the police department has been fully funded, except for the year of 2020 into 2021. And that was a council decision to override the mayor to defund the police department, and we stopped hiring for a 1-year period. And due to natural attrition through retirements and folks leaving the department, we usually hire to the same level, but we just immediately dropped 250 to 300 officers, and we're still trying to make up ground. However, with that being said, the Mayor Bowser has been a steadfast supporter of this police department through thick and thin, and her budget reflects that. And when we have to do overtime units or redeployments or whatever it takes to handle a certain situation, the budget is there to support us. In terms of infrastructure, last year we've been able to invest in technology, additional technologies, analytics regarding cell phone extractions, things of that nature, more surveillance cameras, investing in crime gun intelligence, and making sure our detective cadre is fully staffed, because that's who brings the most violent criminals into the system and gets them off the street. So That has been a positive for us here in Washington, D.C. Moving forward, we know we're going to have some budget shortfalls the next couple of years, right? A lot of our federal workforce still working from home. They're not contributing to the local economy. Those buildings are, at quarter capacity, and we can repurpose those if needed. But we've got work to do. We need the feds to get back to work. We need to have a vibrant, workforce not only here in Washington but across the DMV, within our sister counties as well. So challenges ahead, but fortunately for us, I think the mayor and the council are both in sync when it comes to public safety, and I expect the MPD to be fully resourced moving forward.
Chief Aziz, when I was on the police department, I haven't been a cop for well over 10 years now. I recall some data that suggested the Prince George's County Police Department should be around 2,000, 2,100 strong. And when I was there, I believe we were well over 1,500. Where are you now? And I can imagine, just based on what I hear, that recruiting is as difficult as it's ever been. And getting officers who have been on the agency for a while to stay is as challenging as it's ever been. So what are you experiencing in Prince George's County in terms of your workforce, retention, recruitment? How's that going for you?
Yes, thank you. It's when we look at what you mentioned when you started out with what a force should be, and I think across all industry standards, whether they are coming from DOJ or one of the professional police organizations, that it has been somewhere between 2.5, 3.0 per 1,000 people. In a county of 1 million people, it would say that Prince George's County needed at least 2,500 officers to effectively address that 3 per 1,000 ratio. We've been in a crisis and a challenge of recruitment for a couple of years now, shaped around the national narrative of policing. So where we are now, and we are steady driving towards this, but where we are now, we're slated for almost 1,800 officers for this police force. That's what we are authorized. And right now we have 1,432 police. So if that's any indication of where we are against what we are authorized, then it would indicate we're in a major challenge of recruiting. Let me frame this even more, Carrie. In 2012, we were looking at the numbers in 2012. We had almost 8,000 people apply for Prince George's County Police Department alone to want to come to this very robust, vibrant police department that you spent many years at. You and Chief Davis. It is in 2022, we ended the year just short of 900 people. So in 10 years, you can go from 8,000 to less than 900 people who want to join this police force. And that is what we're battling, because in this area, we have great police departments. You look, we have DC, and they need officers. We have Fairfax, and they are doing a great job, and it's a great place to and like everywhere else around here, live, work, and play. And then you go up the street here, my good friend Commissioner Harrison. He's looking for people in Baltimore County with McCullough, and not too far from that is Philadelphia, who is in a crisis of a challenge of hiring. What we've been doing is we've been hitting all the traditional places, but we've been trying to sell the county. I think we have a great county under our leader, the county executive, also Brooks, and we have been trying to sell the very vibrant living here, be ambassadors of a great county that is in a great region, that you can go to places like Virginia and DC and the great places that's already in Maryland. Our image, our brand, this badge, this patch, that it means something to be the best ambassador, because we won't be able to compete. We offer $15,000 for an experienced police officer. Many people are offering that and more. We offer it, up to 15 for any officer to come here, or any recruit will get 10,000 to come here as a bonus. That singularly won't be enough, because we had to expand our retirement program, our drop, to allow people to extend for 2 years. That has shown some benefit to meeting the crisis of recruiting. It still won't be enough if we don't reframe the narrative around policing and have people come join us who want to be part of the fabric of the communities in which we traverse through, we're going to have that problem. And we're in a great challenge, like many other departments right now. We've pulled out everything we possibly could pull out here, and we've been supported by our county executive and the council, and we're right up against the budget this year to see what we need. But we're in a fight. We're in a dog fight for personnel, and we're fighting each other, and that's no good outcome. We're fighting each other for bodies. We're fighting each other for people, and that's not a good outcome either, Kerry. That in law enforcement, that we're fighting each other to get the same group of people who are interested in law enforcement.
Yeah, the demand is certainly greater than the supply right now for you. So I'm going to take a few questions from folks listening in, and the first question I'm going to take is from my friend Misty Allen from Comcast. Hi, Misty, and understand that this is the Greater Washington Board of Trade, so we have a number of business leaders here. And her question is, do you believe that if the business community created more internships or apprentices and pathways, generally that would reduce crime, even providing childcare or reducing transportation barriers? The root cause of crime has to be addressed collaboratively. How can the business community partner with you all? Chief Davis.
So I'll try to answer that in a little bit of a different way. And based on the heels of Chief Aziz's comments, I think the business community can help all of us by putting their heads together to come up with some affordable housing opportunities for young police officers. There's research out there that shows that if a police officer lives in the jurisdiction where he or she serves during his or her first 5 years on the job, that they're more than likely to stay there for the remainder of their careers. One of the challenges we have in Fairfax County is this is a very expensive place for teachers, firefighters, police officers to live. So, I have conversations with folks in the business community all the time, and short-term, long-term. Short-term, one thing the business community can do is put their heads together with all of our agencies and find ways to provide affordable housing opportunities for cops. One good thing about all three of us, we work for very supportive pro-public safety appointing authorities. Mayor Bowser, County Executive Alsobrooks, Chairman Jeff McKay. We are supported. Our starting pay just went from 56 to 65. Wow. We just started our largest police academy class since 2014. But it's a lot of effort. So I think the business community short-term, find some opportunities for a young police officer and his or her family to live where they serve. I think it's important. I think back to when we started, Kerry. They were called rent deals back then. Mm-hmm. So many of us took advantage of those opportunities because it embedded us in the community. So I think that needs to come back. But fighting the root causes of crime and disorder, that's a long-term conversation. It's an important effort, but there are so many things that need to be done in the short term.
I have another question. Chief Benedict, please discuss the no chase policy in DC. How quickly do you communicate with other counties to help when criminals cross the DC border?
So our pursuit policy in DC is definitely highly restrictive, especially when it comes to traffic violations. So if our officers make a traffic stop, and after what we deem to be a reasonable amount of time, that car doesn't pull over, the watch commander or the officer can use their discretion to just terminate that and not even call it a pursuit, and we'll deal with that situation later. What becomes problematic for us and for the greater community is when we're behind an armed carjacker, right? Somebody has just stuck a gun in somebody's face and taken their vehicle. Is that person now posing a danger to the community at large? And should we chase them or not? Are they actively firing the weapon? We have to make those decisions in the heat of the moment. The watch commander's got to make those decisions. And a lot of the times they'll pull back because our city council has passed legislation that officer has to know that this pursuit will not result in harm to any other individuals on the roadway. And that's impossible for us to forecast, right? So our officers and watch commanders are going to make that decision to pull back and let this violent offender move on, maybe into Prince George's County or Fairfax or other parts of Washington, D.C., and we have to do our due diligence to get them into custody. That's an issue for us. It's highly restrictive. Passing legislation has made it complicated even further. I just recently read about Minneapolis police chief had changed his policy to make it less restrictive when people use firearms to commission violent crimes to be able to pursue them, but using good judgment, right, protecting the public. So from DC's perspective, that's something that we just continue to need to address. If a chase starts in Prince George's County and comes into the district, we are not allowed to join our brethren in Prince George's County in that pursuit, as they had initiated that pursuit. Same thing with Fairfax when they come into the city. So we can assist, we can back them up, but we cannot engage in that pursuit. So we have some things that we need to try to fix on our end.
Chief Davis far earlier mentioned the pendulum, and I do sense that we are dealing with that pendulum swinging back and forth. And I have a question that just came in. How can businesses effectively ensure that elected officials are putting pressure on local states' attorneys to keep these violent offenders in jail, diversion programs, et cetera, for both juveniles and adults? That's not necessarily the message that you were getting 3 years ago, but now there's a business community that wants to help you deliver that message. How do we do that?
Well, Kerry, I think back to the first decade of our career in Prince George's County, and if you or I were told back then that there would one day be a national harbor, there'd be MGM, that we would say no way.
Absolutely.
We'd say no way. So, but back then, right around the turn of the century, which still feels like yesterday to me, but to these young kids, some of them weren't even born. The business community came together when we started to turn the tide on violence and crime. And I'm sure the same occurred in DC. When the CAP Center shut down in Landover and Abe Poland moved the Wizards to the area where they now located downtown, everyone predicted that was crazy. So what's old is always new again. And the pendulum is always swinging, but I think the relationships that business leaders have with elected officials are certainly important ones. And I would just reiterate what I said earlier. Introducing a person, particularly a violent person, to the criminal justice system is not counterintuitive to reform. It's not counterintuitive to good policing and public safety. I think it just became such an issue where it was one or the other with public safety. And now I do think communities are saying, hold on a second, maybe we went a little bit too far. Even nonviolent crimes like theft. All of us have Home Depots and Targets and high-end stores in our communities. Thieves are going in there now, and they are just unabated, taking whatever they want and leaving. And when they're caught, and we do a pretty good job catching them, they don't face a consequence. So I think the role of the business leaders continues to be vitally important with all of our elected officials, and hold us accountable too. We're fair game.
Absolutely. I'm sure that most people that have joined us today probably saw that video of the CVS in Montgomery County, where the individual just walked right in with a bag and just started pulling things off the counter into the bag and walked calmly right back out. And everybody just watched it happen, and there's probably little or no consequence.
That's not a victimless crime. Some will say that's a victimless crime. It's not a victimless crime. We all pay.
And I'm going to use your comments right there to go back to the conversation earlier about problem-solving courts and the value of problem-solving courts. I don't know that can be said enough. And, they should be funded better. There should be more of them. And I do believe that the outcomes out of a problem-solving court are proven and something that we should really investigate a bit further. I think we have time for one last question. Chief Benedict is from Banjo Anderson. We have seen numerous international jurisdictions invest heavily in consolidation of law enforcement and shared public safety services to improve economies of scale, co-invest in leaps of technology, and improve the number of experts, officers on the streets, getting out of admin roles with no operational lens. This is obviously harder in the US to construct, but I'd be interested to hear your reflections on working in this challenge, particularly as it impacts out your ability to buy expensive technology, assets, and dynamically allocate resources across larger areas. And I point this question to you because your jurisdiction is remarkably unique in that there are so many law enforcement departments, so many police departments in the city, and you all coordinate efforts in some way. So what are your thoughts about that question?
So I think 9 of every $10 in our budget is for personnel costs. And if we really want to make a difference and invest in technology, we got to increase that maybe to 8 out of 10. I think is a good economy of scale to make a difference there. As far as technology, we definitely rely on our federal partners to kind of bridge some of the gaps that we have. We went into last year at this time, we had a 40% increase in commercial robberies. So we immediately, tapped our investigative services bureau to work with the FBI and the ATF in this space, armed commercial robberies. We were able to close out 22 pattern robberies, and then ATF was able to do 11. And as I mentioned earlier, this small group of people was responsible for most of this crime. They use GPS technology. They use crime gun intelligence. Some of these weapons were fired, which linked to other crimes, which led us to review other video evidence. We're able to use cell phone tracking, all of those tools to corroborate what we thought was happening, boots on the ground detectives. So be able to work across agencies and utilize their technology. The marshals are extremely capable in this space. The Secret Service, you think, is just about protection. It's not. They have a fantastic cell phone exploitation unit and tracking. And that's what we need, because when we bring this evidence into court, it shouldn't be, do we have enough? We have enough. We have enough partners to do that, but we got to be able to increase that piece of the budget for MPD to invest in technology. We're not there yet. I think we can do better.
So we have 2 minutes left. I'm about to hand it back to Jack, but before I do, I would love each of you to give me just one sentence, how we can help you do your jobs better. Chief Aziz, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I'll just say this. It doesn't need one sentence. I will say this. These 2 words: get involved. That's it.
Chief Benedict.
How about one word? Partnership.
And I'll close with you, Chief Davis.
A lot of pressure. 2 words to 1 word to this. I'll be a little bit different. Ask the tough questions, because we'll give you the answers.
I really want to thank you all for this conversation. I'm pretty sure that at least I could have gone on for another hour working with you all. And Jack, back to you.
Yeah, that's great, Kerry. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a really good conversation. Very much appreciated. Chief Aziz, Chief Benedict, and Chief Davis. Really important conversation. There's a lot we have to do in this region, and you can count on us to continue to work with you on all of these different objectives. And there's a lot of programs and things out there, and so we need to do a better job of getting some of that information out to the public too, so that people can participate in and address some of these different issues. So again, thank you all for spending time with us today. And I do want to thank MGM National Harbor, Comcast, First National Bank, Giant Food, GS Proctor & Associates, Holland & Knight, McGuire Woods, and McGuire Woods Consulting for helping us put this series on. We have some conversations coming up with the region's labor secretaries, also the attorney generals. So if we want to talk about prosecutions, that will be a topic that we can address there, financial leaders and more. And so with that, again, I want to thank everybody for joining and thank the chiefs. You're doing great work out there, and you can count on our support. And I wish everybody a really good day.